about the making of a film that nobody wants to see. And can we straighten that image a little bit? Rachel, you're taller than me. I think everybody's taller than me. Is the So the name of the film is Farm and Red Moon, A Decade of Discovery, Despair, and Delight. And the reason why I thank Framingham State University is because this place has let me grow into the person I am now as an academic and an artist and as a teacher. When I came here in 2002, I was like at the beginning of the world in the middle of a candy store. And this film would not be possible if it weren't for my colleagues and the administrators that supported me all along the way. And thank you for Yumi Park and everyone in Arts and Ideas for giving me this opportunity. You are the first audience to hear this story. So somebody might ask, why does it take 10 years to make a movie? Well, that's what I'll talk about. What happened? Okay. Where did it go? Did it disconnect? Oh, there it is. Okay. It disconnected it again. You were having that trouble too, right? Take two. Okay. And I guess this is kind of funny in the part belonging to the slaughterhouse, because as Dr. Zimmerman introduced, my work began with research in ancient Greek rhetoric. So how did I get to this point? This is me in a Colorado slaughterhouse a while ago. And not too long after that, when I was at Framingham State working on tenure, I started to research ancient Greek courtesans, and I worked with Frune, who is a courtesan that bared herself in court to get forgiveness. And this article was published in the Rhetoric of Western Thought. But what happened after that was that I hit, I guess, an academic dead end. I thought, where's my work going? Why am I doing this? I have no idea what I want to do. And I was granted tenure. What's happening? And so my daughter, which kids usually, out of the mouths of babes, said, "Mom, why don't you do something that you care about or you're really interested in?" And I said, "Oh, animals. I love animals. Animals are great." And my daughter was, her boyfriend at the time was in American Studies, and he was studying, doing conference papers in animal studies, and I didn't know much about the field at all, and it's very interdisciplinary. So I started reading in the field of animal studies. Again, it was like I was starting, as a professor, I was starting graduate school all over again. I'm learning something all over again, and I had no idea that this is what professors do. that you continue your education as you're educating. And so I started becoming interested in the rhetoric of animal rights, and I went off the deep end, okay? I went off the end where I became a vegan. I watched PETA videos, and I thought, I can't participate in this any longer. But like with any kind of ism, with any kind of fundamentalist ideology, I became myopic. And while I was being myopic, I taught a course. And the course that I taught was human-animal relationships. It was a special topics course. And it wasn't like I was trying to convince all of my students to be vegans. I was just trying to open their eyes. But I still had that orientation of self-righteousness, that I want to make the world a better place, and everyone has to stop eating meat, or we're all doomed. Okay. So I thought, yeah, I want to do something academic as well. So I became a reviewer for the Journal of Critical Animal Studies. And this is an absolute abolitionist organization that believes in not exploiting animals at all, not even having pets or riding a horse. And I didn't publish in this journal, but I read a lot of their work, and I reviewed articles for acceptance. And that brought me further into the fold of, I'm an animal rights advocate. So I decided to write a paper, and I presented it at Michigan State. And the paper was The Factory Farmed Animal as Cartoon, Animal Advocacy Campaigns and Animated Anthropomorphism. And basically what this was about is how, I was looking at how PETA, and this is a picture of a PETA pig saying, "Love me, don't eat me," if using cartoons somehow takes away from the seriousness of the issue. Like, they're not showing animals that are really being abused. They're showing very much so anthropomorphized images of animals. And at this conference, my eyes were opened to how closed off I was being, because at this conference were also people who taught in animal studies programs. They worked with research on cattle. And so I started saying, well, I'm presenting at a conference as a vegan who's an ideologue, and I'm talking to people who are promoting animal agriculture. What's happening here? So at this point, I decided to really look into how are these animals killed? Because my only view of it was from the PETA videos. And slaughterhouses are invisible. We don't know. Like, do you know how many slaughterhouses are in Massachusetts? There are 2. but this is something that was not talked about my whole life. And I started asking some of my students in my classes, what do they know about this topic? They knew nothing. I even had a student ask me, do you mean male cows can't give milk? I said, did you just ask me that question? And you're graduating from this university. Okay. And then questions like, oh, we eat eggs. And, okay, so eggs come from females, and, okay, so what happens to the male chicks? Well, you don't need them, do you? What's in your pet food? So I was asking all these questions, but mainly I wanted to know what happens at this moment of killing. And so I was invited to talk on a conference, the Rhetoric and Animals Conference at the University of Oslo. And I began to understand that the exploration of this topic involves asking a lot of questions that are very unpleasant. And that there are a lot of stakeholders, a lot of people who have different interests. And I began to understand, and the paper I delivered there was Sense and Insensibility, Contested Rhetorics of the Humane Methods of Slaughter Act. And up to that point, I thought that humane slaughter was an oxymoron. But then I learned that Well, we have the American Meat Institute. They have a welfare program. The USDA inspects where all of our meat is processed, and they have humane protocols. Then the Government Accountability Office was also involved in it because Congress was looking at all of the abuses that were happening in slaughterhouses. And then there's the Animal Welfare Institute. And all of these organizations have different guidelines into what's the right way to kill an animal. How can you kill an animal painlessly? Can you kill an animal painlessly? So after I wrote this paper, I got a little, should I cover up this shirt? Nita's murder. This is actually an animation from the film. And I decided to, with the generosity of Framingham State's professional development, take a course in digital filmmaking. I was not a filmmaker. I was a photographer. I did video as an undergraduate with VHS at the time, but I had no idea. But I wanted to go beyond writing an academic paper and make a statement. I wanted to, I was still a vegan at the time. I wanted to say, well, if I get legitimate access to a slaughterhouse, if I'm just not undercover like a PETA video, if I actually get permission to go in and show people what happens, nobody's going to want to eat meat anymore. And so that's why the whole thing with the film is a vegan goes into a slaughterhouse, meets the farmers, meets the slaughterhouse workers, becomes an omnivore, and has empathy with the farmers. But my teacher at Mass Art, where I took 2 classes over the course of the summer, is David Temes, who became my co-director. And he said one of the things that he always wished he hadn't said was, oh, if you ever want to make a feature film, I'll be glad to help. And so, okay. And so I'm going to show you just a little piece of, at Mass Art, I did this 14-minute documentary where I went around New England. It was just me, my camera, and I learned editing thanks to Professor Johnson here, who inspired me as someone who didn't know beans about a Mac and how things work. And so the documentary was about how farmers feel when they send their animals off to slaughter. I was asking them really hard questions. I made some farmers cry. But this is just, here we go again. So it delves into life of small-scale meat farmers, illustrates their conflicted thoughts. That's really loud. Can I make that less loud? That was a chicken. Can you make my chicken less loud?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, less loud chicken. Here we go. Let's try it. No. No.
Feathers on your...
Wait, it won't play. Okay, there it is. So really getting into the animals. This is one of
Feathers on your... Blood, feathers, manure, but that's what happens.
To kill it, you have to get close to it, and you have to look it in the eye, and it's looking you in the eye, and there's a connection there. I don't know what you'd call it, but it's not, I'm not ignoring it. I think that's the worst you can do, is just sort of take something for granted and not relate to it at all.
I think when you sit down to that meal and share it with people, it takes on, maybe you can call it spiritual.
That picture? Sorry. Should I play this? Did you miss that? Okay.
Blood. It's got some shock value, sure. It's not exactly pleasant. It's hard work, so it's probably easy to see why technology's come to our rescue to make our lives easier. Just leave it to somebody else. But I think it's disrespectful.
So this was my first exposure to meeting people who meat the meat that they eat. Okay, and so I thought, okay, I'm gonna make a feature film. I'm inspired now. I'm gonna learn more. So I applied for a grant to the Culture and Animals Foundation. This is founded by Tom Regan, animal rights activist who's since passed. And I decided to make a film called Abattoir Rising, because then I realized that, oh, well, the problem is we just need more slaughterhouses and we need more training. That's what we need. And so, am I okay on time? You? Okay. So what happened was that I went from, aha, I had to have the answer, to, uh-oh, it's very complicated. And I drew a mind map. Okay, so here we have humane slaughter in the middle, and then we have local farmers, we have animal byproducts, we have religious exemptions, we have transportation, we have the locavore movement, we have different types of stunning, and we have, oh, and on and on and on and on and on and on. And then I had a sabbatical. That was good. Yeah. And I also realized that to that point, I was the director, it was my baby, it's all mine, and then I realized I can't do this by myself. I need a co-director. I have ideas, but I don't know how to manifest them into technology. And David Tomez has since moved, he's now at Northeastern University. And my sabbatical, I went to Washington, D.C. And I thought, I'm gonna ask some questions. And I'm gonna get some answers. So first I talked to Dina Jones, Animal Welfare Institute.
Oh, this is such a complicated issue. Depends on whether they cut both vessels, it depends on how long the cut is, it depends on the length of the knife and the sharpness.
Volume? Oh, you can hear it? Okay, I think I'm just not hearing well anymore. Oops.
Oh, this is such a complicated issue. Depends on whether they cut both vessels, it depends on how long the cut is, it depends on the length of the knife and the sharpness of the knife and the depth of the cut, and there's so many, the species, the age of the species.
Then I went to the government accountability.
We were asked by Congress to look at USDA's enforcement of the Humane Methods of Slaughter Act. What we found is generally there's an inconsistency in the enforcement. USDA's guidance was unclear, and also that there was insufficient training.
So it's getting more complex, right? And then I met Meghan Park, who was the director of Global Animal Partnership that runs the welfare rating standards for Whole Foods. And
I just feel that as long as we are going to continue consuming them, as long as we are going to continue raising them for food, the very least we can do is to ensure that they have the highest level of welfare that we can afford to them. We're talking about completely mainstream issues. How on earth has compassion for animals turned into this kind of crazy, wacky, fringe notion? You ask 10 people on the street, and I guarantee you, every single time, each one of those 10 people will tell you absolutely they're concerned.
And what really surprised me, so she's the director of the Humane Standards for Whole Foods, and she's a vegan. I realized that, oh, so there are vegans, but they're helping animals not die. a painful death. And then there's, I went to the American Meat Institute next.
Well, 95% of people want to eat meat. I mean, the Gallup data show 5% of Americans are vegetarians, 95%
Yeah.
are choosing to eat meat or poultry.
Mm.
But then there's some people who, oh, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. Well, maybe you should know.
And last but least, but not last really, I met Dr. Temple Grandin. I emailed her on a Friday, and she called me on the phone on that Sunday, and I still remember on the phone saying, Temple Grandin. I said, holy shit. Really? She's calling me? Okay. And so I explained the film to her and what I was interested in. She was really excited about it. So off I go to Colorado State to film Dr. Temple Grandin in her class. I went to slaughterhouses with her. She looked at footage with me. Just an amazing person. And I'm still in touch with her and would like to have her come to some future screening of the film. But this is one of the things she told me.
We've got to give animals a decent life. And when it's time to die, a painless death.
Okay. So, me, Framingham State University professor, starts to get a lot of recognition. Okay. I was asked to talk on the Callie Crossley show. There was an article in the Metro West Daily News, and we had a work sample screening at Mass Art. And the project seemed to kind of mushroom from there because it starts becoming something else. It's almost like writing a poem. Like you start to write it, and then it starts to write you. It takes over. And we started getting funding. And this is an example of the budget sheet: Framingham State, the Left Moving Image Foundation, Northeastern, Farm Forward. We pulled in probably $50,000 in grant money, but we needed so much more than that. And in order to get more money, the film had to change. And the Left Moving Image Foundation said, nobody wants to see an investigative piece. People want to see a personal journey film. Like, oh, okay. So because to that point, I was behind the camera. I didn't want to be in front of the camera. I didn't want to be in the film. It's not about me. But they convinced me that everybody loves a story. I was the kind of person, they said, well, you need a story arc. I said, what's a story arc? I don't know. So we went on this, we had a Kickstarter campaign. And silly me thought, we're gonna ask for $30,000. We got 8. And of course it was failed. But a good side of this is that interns were brought in from Northeastern, where David was, and also Framingham State. I had a couple of interns work with me, and an intern on a Kickstarter campaign. This is Stephanie.
I remember the first time I met you in my argumentation class, and you said that you wanted to take the class because you heard that I was involved in researching about animals, and you're such an animal lover too.
I wanted to learn more about what you were doing. I heard that you had been doing a documentary, needed to know more. So I wanted to take your class.
So Stephanie participated in the Kickstarter, and Stephanie went with me to meet this guy. This is, so Bong Joon-ho, okay. And he got an Oscar for Parasite a couple years ago, and Best Picture, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay, and you're going, Audrey Callie, how did you meet him? His cousin, his first cousin is Megan Park. Okay, and so, yes, little connection there. So Megan Park told Bong Joon-ho about my work in slaughterhouses because I'm getting permission to go into these places and they're signing off on it. They're not undercover. I just sweet talked my way through it, and they let me come in with the camera. But he wanted to know in the making of Okja what a slaughterhouse is like. I said, I could tell you that. And so Stephanie and I go to New York and meet with him and his producer, and I showed him 3 hours of animals dying. He loved it. And so I ended up in the credits of Okja. Last but not least, there's my name right there. Yeah. But it's part of the story. However, we're still trying to make money with Kickstarter. So this is in the middle of everything. I meet this person, I don't know how famous he is. He gave me a signed copy of Snowpiercer. But this is me in front of the camera in the beginning.
Oh, can you give me my purse?
Where's the purse?
Right there. Because I need some, I need lipstick. Oh, I have feet.
Your lipstick is fine. Oh, cut. All right, here we go. This is the second take. Wow, this color, this is okay.
Yes.
All right, you're looking at this camera over here.
Wait.
Woo! Here.
Or should I use my arms? I don't talk with my arms hanging. How's that?
Fine.
No, fine is not good.
Fine is about as good as we're going to get here.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we thought, well, I'm not working by myself. Let's bring David in. It gets worse.
Say, please watch our trailer. Watch our trailer. Here's our trailer.
Here's our trailer. Say it.
Here is our trailer.
One more time.
No. Okay, so here's what we have. Failed Kickstarter. And I had no idea that making a film could be like falling into quicksand. And I took this picture, when did I take that picture? Last summer, and it's hanging on my wall. It's droplets of moisture in a spider web in the grass. And I thought, I can identify with that. And as I'm putting together this presentation, I realized, wow, there are a lot of connections. And there's not just making the film. We needed to bring in an animator and their sound design, and somebody had to teach me how to talk because I really suck at it. And we needed a script writer. We had to have somebody make music. And we're using these other film clips, so we need legal counsel because of copyright. And post-production is expensive. But you know what? It ended up we had to do it ourselves. So for the past year, David has been editing, and he's totally insane at this point, but he's editing. He did sound design, color correction. It has just been amazing. So this is a preview from what the film is now. It's brief, but it includes the animation.
I thought about how farm animals were killed until I became a vegan. I was born in 1955, too young to know that in 1958 there was a massive public outcry against the mistreatment of animals in slaughterhouses. Thousands of Americans wrote letters to Congress asking for more humane conditions when the animals are killed. I stayed in touch with Temple Grandin, and she felt bad that I'd been doing this research and had seen so many mistakes. She said, "Audrey, I have to show you how it can be done right." At this time, my now-grown daughter was working for the U.S. Embassy in Oman. I went to visit her, and she was able to arrange for me to speak with the Assistant Grand Mufti.
We find many ethical teachings that ask Muslims to be kind, merciful, and to treat animals humanely.
My sister and I, we don't want to hear it. We just want to go out to dinner, have a nice dinner. my mom came over for Christmas dinner this year and had like a group of 5 of my friends sitting around her in a circle talking about animal slaughter.
I used to lie on my stomach in the backyard of my childhood and watch ants as they crawled between blades of grass. In my imagination, they were little people in a forest, and the blades of grass were trees. I worried where they would go when my father mowed the lawn. I warned them whenever the lawnmower was coming. To put this in proper context, I believe that as Paul McCartney said,
if slaughterhouses had glass walls, everyone would be vegetarian.
at least I used to believe that.
So now, what happens now that David has done all of his work with finishing the film, I go into outreach and impact plan, and I'm reaching out to universities across the United States that have departments in animal studies, animal science, and we're giving them free access to the film. I'm going to make a study guide, and we'll talk with them on Zoom, or I will go travel myself. But it's an ongoing labor of love, I guess, for helping things die better. So this was a graphic. There are copies here. The film is going to be screened in Framingham State here on April 21st. This design was made by Lee Seaman, one of our graphic design students here at Framingham State. And there's some information on the back about the different people who will be on the panel discussion. So it's me and David, Jennifer Hashley, who's the director of a new sustainable farming program at Tufts, our own Meghan Mayer, and Ira Silver, to talk about the various issues that are brought up in the film. So thank you so much for listening.